While ChatGPT may have you believing differently, today I've got a first-person account of the fact that Hurricane Helene did indeed hit North Carolina on September 27th, 2024. My guest today was on the ground when it happened and has some riveting stories about what took place in the first 72 hours after the storm hit. Today we'll hear harrowing tales about folks nearly drowning, people stuck on roads with traffic backed up for miles due to downed trees and power lines, and numerous other incidents that our guest Nate happened to be a first responder at. Now, Nate is not a first responder in the formal sense. In fact, he is a construction worker and is just a prepared civilian with a preparedness mindset. Today, we'll get to hear about how he was able to apply his tools, his faith, and his mind to overcome one of the most harrowing events of his life. Now, I met Nate through an email. He had questions about radio stuff and gave me his number, so I called him. The brief conversation that he and I had that night told me everything that I needed to know about this guy. I quickly hung up on the phone because I didn't want to spoil the story, and before I hung up, I told him we need to get this story on the podcast. Many of the details that you'll hear in this story about those fateful 3 days, you and I are both hearing for the first time together here on Gridbased. Now, we weren't able to fit every detail into one episode, so this is part one of a multi-part series wherein Nate will walk us through the harrowing events that took place as the effects from Helene started to reshape the landscape that he was living in. Nate's story is one of those important stories in life. It's important because it sheds light on an event that was widely suppressed, but it also shows what true resilience and leadership looks like when the pedal hits the floor. This story demonstrates God's guidance, grace, and goodwill in spite of tragic events, and should serve as a good reminder for all of us who call ourselves prepared citizens. Without further ado, here's Nate sharing his story about the first 72 hours in western North Carolina during one of the worst natural, if not the worst natural disaster that our country has ever seen. I feel like a lot of times people think about grid down communication scenarios in a hypothetical, and they think about it in like some sort of like destitute, I don't even know, like some apocalyptic, like crazy, like thing. And I think there's really a lot more realistic circumstances that people go through that warrant good comms, and getting the comms up. And so anytime somebody has a story like that can be impactful and helpful for somebody to see a real life example, I want to get that story out there. And so that is what led to this. And Nate and I have been chatting now over the last couple weeks and kind of planning this, and he's been super gracious to come on here and do that. And so I called him before we were getting the podcast studio set up, and I was like, hey, are you ready? And he was like, oh yeah, I'm just out here with a pickaxe, like banging rocks. And I was like, I know you're in coal mining country, but I didn't think they did that anymore. And he was like, no, I'm just working on a project over here. And so anyway, he's got the coveralls on in true form. But yeah, he's taking some time out of his project here to kind of tell us what happened, tell us, what the experience was, and, how communications played a part. And I guess before we dive into that wholly, tell us about like the week before the hurricane, right? Like there was some talk about, this thing was coming and there was some weather, and of course, you're in Western North Carolina, so you're thinking probably like, okay, and like tell us a little bit about the lead up to, the disaster.
The weather in Western North Carolina is, especially over the past, the past couple of years, past 5 years, I guess, has just been hit or miss. It's predicting the weather is just a calculated guess. But people were skeptical, and as they always are, and it was, they say we're going to get, this amount of rain. It was biblical amounts of rain, and everybody's like, it's probably not going to do what they say it's going to do. But really the biggest thing for me personally that happened in the week before was, I was trying to get organized and go into business full time. So, I own and operate Practical Earth Solutions, a grading and landscaping company here in Western North Carolina. And I was just fixing to purchase. I had already purchased my first excavator. It's a Mini X. And so everything was done. The paperwork was done. I was going to have to wait on it though, because they're in really high demand. So So Caterpillar told me that, hey, you're not going to be able to get this until it was going to be like 3 weeks out or maybe even a month out. So I was fine. I was waiting. Lo and behold, Wednesday before the storm, the salesman called and he said, "Hey, good news." He said, we had a cell fall through and you got bumped up. Your excavator's planned to be delivered
Praise
on
God.
Thursday. I thought, okay, this is cool. I was happy about the excavator, and then the excavator I got delivered to a job site, and as the predictions of the storm were getting closer, I got to thinking, maybe just in case this thing does actually smack Western North Carolina like they say it's going to, I'm just going to go grab that thing and bring it home. Just to have it. I mean, in case somebody needs help or I need to pull a tree out of the driveway or something like that due to high winds.
I mean, you got an excavator, you might as well have it on you.
Right, it's doing me no good. I mean,
Right.
it would suck to be sitting in the driveway sawing up chunks of wood
Sure.
and moving them by hand while I have an excavator across town. So I did just that, and thank God that I did that, because Friday around 10 o'clock, it started, and it started with the strongest winds I've ever experienced in my life, and trees were just coming down left and right. I mean, it was like it was apocalyptic. We talked about apocalyptic a minute ago. It was just crazy. I've never seen so many trees just one right after the other, wham, 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 just falling down.
Before we move on real quick, I want to ask you about that that turning point, right? Like, when did it go? Or I guess not when, but how quickly did it shift from, yep, this is weather does weather, to like, oh, this is about to be nasty. Like, how short was that window? Are we talking about like over the course of 3 hours? Are we talking about like 30 minutes? Like, what was that window like from like, yep, weather's moving in, to, oh God?
It was instant.
It was instant.
Yeah, it was instant because I've never, like when I say I've never experienced wind like that, it was just a normal breeze all morning, and then all of a sudden, so we're in the process of, me and my family, my wife and my 2 kids, we're in the process of building a house, and so we actually live in a camper. So in the camper and surrounding the camper are these trees, and I don't know if you've ever experienced wind living inside a fifth wheel camper, but
I have. I used to live in a 1,000 square foot tiny home, and it was very similar. I remember just even like casual storms and stuff that would come through. I mean, it was like, yeah, it was crazy. Because then not only do you have the broadside of the camper taking the brunt of the wind in most cases, but then underneath the camper, I mean, the wind was going under it, over it. We would get whistles. It was crazy. Yeah. Even normal regular storms. So
stuff flapping.
Yeah, stuff flapping. When you said that, that was the first thing I thought about, was the storms that we used to weather in the tiny home. And then when I lived in my van, it was similar too. It was obviously smaller, so like less wind catchy, but I remember the tiny home was really crazy. So yeah, I can't imagine. So you're in this storm's happening. It's going from not happening to happening. I mean, it sounds like the onset of this is pretty quick. And then you're in the fifth wheel camper.
When I realized that this is going to be bad, the first gust of wind came by that was nothing like any of us had ever experienced that were inside the camper. My youngest son, Turner, comes running in out of his room, scared to death. And I think the look on my face when it hadn't went away yet. No, yeah. So I had looked at my wife and looked at her wide eyed, like, whoa, what was that? We've never experienced that before. And then him running in, and that look was still on my face, definitely it did not comfort him any. And that's when I realized, I said, okay, this is different. This is not just, this isn't just a normal storm. This is, okay. I thought, okay, maybe that was just a gust. Maybe that was a freak gust. Everything's going to be okay, buddy. Everything's all right. And then it continued.
Yeah,
and it continued and continued and continued.
Dad holding it down. I want to rewind just a skosh and say, so you go, you get the excavator. Clearly, that's a part of your prep, and that happens the same day that the storm comes in. I guess some hours before you go and get the Mini X. And then what else
was your prep looking like leading up into this? I mean, full tanks of gas. I guess you already had some water on hand, or what was your level of consideration for preparing for this? In the days leading up to it.
When it comes to radio communication, your antenna is everything. And that's why ZBM2 Industries is the only antennas that we use on all of our radios here at GridBase. They make the finest quality antennas that money can buy. Each antenna is handcrafted in San Diego, California, using top-tier materials, tested and sourced right here inside the United States. They've got everything from rugged vehicle-mounted antennas to high-performance handheld antennas. Whatever you're looking for, ZBM2 has got you covered. So, no matter where you are, you can upgrade your signal today and save 10% using the code GRIDBASE10 at checkout. Again, that's zbm2industries.com. Use the code GRIDBASE10 for 10% off at checkout.
Well, I really didn't. It's actually a good point to make, Jake, because I didn't really do much because I was already prepared for I didn't know I was preparing for this. I just prepare.
Yeah, if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready.
Right. Yeah. So everybody, they call people preppers. You can also change that terminology around it to where it doesn't sound as pointed. Oh, he's a prepper. No, he's just a man who is prepared. Okay, prepared for what? I don't know. It's just I just have things that could possibly help me in any situation,
Well, and so much of it is what's happening in between your ears, right? I mean, clearly there's a lot of equipment that goes into some of this stuff, right? And in an extreme case, as is in your case, you had a mini excavator. I don't know that many preppers have prioritized that, or even could operate one if they found one. But so that's an extreme case. But I'd like to think that you're the type of person that could have scrap together whatever you needed because of what was happening in between your ears, right? Like it's a mindset, it's thoughtfulness about these things, it's awareness of the potential things that could happen and what tools and available resources are already around you that can give you a leg up in an instance. And so I guess what I'm saying with that is that yes, you had the equipment and you already had the stuff and you didn't know what you were preparing for. But I think the number one thing because I mean, think about it. Somebody who's bad at stress management or time management, like they may have all the tools, right? They may have a Black Hawk helicopter. But if they don't have good stress management skills, it does them no good. And so I think that's another thing that I always like to bring into the conversation when we're talking about quote-unquote preppers or whatever, because I think even within the prepper community, there's two kinds of people. There's like frantic, anxiety-ridden, nervous, sky-is-falling preppers, and then there's like folks who are just self-contained and thoughtful and, have things going on in between their ears where they're just kind of like, yeah, I'm ready for this kind of stuff, And it sounds to me like very clearly that you're the latter part of that, somebody who just operates in a prepared mindset, at any given point in time, and you happen to have the skills and the tools, to use when and if you should need to do that. So, yeah. Anyway, what are you prepping for? Yeah. Well, I don't know, but I guess it's going to be one of the worst natural disasters that the United States has ever seen, I guess. Just kind of living about your day, normal guy just doing stuff, and then you walk into this situation. So, son walks in, he sees your face, you and the wife are figuring out things are shifty. Do you have a plan to get out of there and go somewhere else? Is there a storm shelter, or is your plan to like hunker down and hold on?
So our situation was a little different than a lot of areas in the immediate community. We weren't in any danger of being flooded. We were on high ground. The trees, there were only a couple that were threatening, and they weren't large. So yeah, our plan the whole time, and we're also developing this plan as the day goes on. And once I realized that one of the trees, actually the top of it broke out, and it landed beside the camper. I think if it was if it had have fell in a different direction, that it might have still brushed the side of the camper. There might have been some cosmetic damage or something, but we were in no danger of a tree actually harming us. So we were safe. The only thing there was fear, and once I went outside and I looked to see how the trees were bending, double, it was eerie, but there was nothing. The only danger that I was anxious about, okay, is this going to be a tornado? Are we going to experience a tornado come through here, or strong enough wind to actually pick our residence up and move it? Anything short of that, I was totally okay with. So I went outside and just started checking around, and I saw the tree had already fell. I was like, well, okay, that's, now the only thing is, okay, what happened? My mind immediately, okay, power. All these trees are going to come down. The power is going to go out eventually. If this continues, the power is going to go out. So I started prepping for that. We already had a generator, making sure that there was fuel for it and then things like that. And just so that it was flawless, so that nothing changed. Like the kids and the wife and everybody, they just continued living. They could continue playing their Xbox or whatever it was, even though there's a storm going on outside.
Since 1885, Avon has been around, and they've been making the world's best gas mask trusted by nearly every warfighter in nearly every major conflict that the Allied powers have ever faced. But today we know that the threats are not just on the battlefield. Each year we've got thousands of seaborne events happening right here inside the United States at home. Everything from the extreme fires like we saw in California and Maui, all the way up to and including train derailments, industrial accidents, plane crashes. All of these are disasters that release toxic fumes that are strong enough to evacuate neighborhoods and cities. The list is truly endless, and I'd encourage you to start thinking about protecting yourself and your family from those types of threats. Avon masks are built for real-world protection. They're practical, comfortable, and easy to put on when every second counts. Not only that, they've got a wide range of styles and numerous different types of NIOSH-certified filters so that you can be assured that you'll be covered against any conceivable threat. However, owning a mask is just the beginning. Knowledge is power, and proper training is key when we start talking about donning and doffing seaborne masks. Thankfully, Avon has you covered there too, with numerous different training guides and data sheets listed on their website so that you can be confident that you've got all the information you need to make the decision on your purchase and post-purchase. We've got to start getting ready for the unthinkable, so use my code GRIDBASE10 for 10% off at shop.avon-protection.com and protect yourself with the best.
Well, you know what? I mean, we're joking about that, and clearly I can see the humor in it, but I also think it's good, this is... I'm going to shameless plug real quick. The Pocket has all kinds of information on it, right? And that's the product that we sell that has off-grid internet. And, we could have certainly just included the information that's like water purification and, sustainment survival things. But one of the things that we sought to do when we set out to put the information on there was we wanted a whole bunch of other resources that really had nothing to do with prepping, but were entertainment. So there's 60,000 books on there. There's all kinds of videos. And there's a very specific reason for that. It's not just to say that it also has entertainment stuff on it. It's because sometimes you have to keep a sense of normalcy for kids. Think about like a 6-month fallout, right? Where like nothing's back online. You guys are like still there. You still got to keep the kids in school. You got to keep them entertained. It's not necessarily their position to suffer through this thing. I don't know. I just think it's a part of community rehabilitation, and it's a part of having normalcy for the children, like to have entertainment, to have things. And so, to keep their mind off of it. And ultimately that allows you to do your job better because you can stay focused. The kids aren't on you, so there's like a part of that is, I know we're joking about it, but it's actually like a really, I think a really worthwhile thing to do. Keep the Xbox up for the kids, like let them focus on that. And then you can, when it's time to cut off the Xbox and get out of Dodge, like clearly you can make that call. But no sense in everybody freaking out and not having anything to do. I mean, that's just going to make you less effective and make you less focused. Or mama, make her less focused. Now she's having to tend to the kids instead of being a support to you. Anyway, so yeah, that's a worthwhile thing to do. If you can keep the Xbox up, good. If you can keep education going after schools are closed for an indefinite amount of time, good. Those are good things. So the immediate onslaught happens. You guys are good. And then this is the part of the story that people should have been waiting for. So then you go out and do kind of a community assessment, an evaluation of your neighbors and see what's going on. Are you on foot? Are you driving? And what is the immediate reveal as you start to go out and see what's going on out there? What is kind of hitting you at that time?
Well, it's kind of like an onion, Jake, because just to get out of the driveway, there's one tree down. So, okay, no big deal. Hop in the excavator. I'm not even driving a vehicle. I just hop in the excavator because I knew that there's a tree down somewhere. Oh, that's part of the story that's important. So the power at this point, by the time I leave, the power had already been cut off. That's the reason why I went to check. So
Gotcha.
I go out to check to see what the problem with the power is. There's got to be a tree on a line somewhere. And as I'm going out the drive, I'm just checking on this person, that person, and I come upon a tree. So I've got the chainsaw in the excavator, and 2 cuts real quick, zip, zip, get the tree gone. Moving right along. So that's what I meant when I said it's kind of like an onion. I didn't know how bad it was until I was in the middle of it. And I'm sure we'll get there, because the middle of it was definitely not my immediate community. It was bad. There were trees down on the main road. It's just a 2-lane double yellow line country road, just a back road.
Yeah.
Look left at the end of the driveway, there's trees down everywhere. Look right at the end of the driveway, there's trees down everywhere. Realize there's no ingress and egress for anyone. So we just so I go back. I grab my father-in-law. This is still Friday around 10 o'clock. Maybe 12 now, noon. Grabbed my father-in-law and I said, "Hey, grab your saw if you're willing to go with me. And just throw your stuff in the truck. Follow me in the excavator." I was like, I don't like being stuck like this. I don't like no ingress and egress. I was like, we've got to get a way out. So we start cutting. Make a really long story short, all the way out, left and right. You come upon these people who are just sitting in front of this tree that's down, and they're just sitting there. Their vehicle is they're just sitting in the car with no idea of what they're going to do. They can't call anyone because at this point, we didn't know what was going on with the cell phones, but the cell phones at this point were not in operation. And I didn't realize that until I was already gone. I had already went out, and when I say gone, I was only maybe a half mile from my house. But I keep trying to make phone calls, and it's not working. So obviously, okay, something's wrong with cell service. Not sure what it is. But these people are just sitting in their car. So I get out and I go up, I walk up and I was like, "Hey, is everything okay?" So yeah, I'm just trying to get home. I went to breakfast after third shift. I haven't been able to make it home yet. These people can't contact home because there's no cell service, and they haven't been in contact with their family since they left for work the day before. And their family has no idea. I can't imagine that feeling. Like, I can't imagine not knowing, hey, where is my wife? Where is mom? Where is, they were supposed to be home at whatever. And then you get in your vehicle and you drive out the driveway, or you try to drive out the driveway to go and find them. And there's trees down, and not just trees down, all the trees are down, and you have no resources to get that cleared up. It's just this very surface of this storm is mind blowing. And we're going to get deeper and deeper. But.
Yeah. So let's, we know now what's happened because we saw it all on the news, but this is why I led in with like what was going on beforehand, because I'm just trying to paint the picture that at this point, you don't have the slightest clue of the extent of what's happening. Towns are being erased.
Supply chain issues, factory shutdowns, extreme weather, extended travel, there are countless ways that your access to medication can be disrupted. But with Jace Medical, you don't have to take that risk. Jace Medical empowers you with a curated pharmaceutical case designed just for you by a physician. It's got everything from antibiotics to medications for diabetes, heart health, cholesterol, blood pressure, mental health, family planning, and more. You'll have what you need when you need it with Jace Case. Even if you've got specific pharmaceutical needs, Jace will work with you to build a custom case that fits your lifestyle, and every case comes with a detailed guide so that you can confidently manage your medications even when you're away from your doctor. Having life-saving medications on hand should never be an afterthought. So get prepared today and use code GRIDBASE10 for 10% off at jacemedical.com. Again, that's GRIDBASE10 for 10% off at jacemedical.com.
You're figuring this out in real time that, like, okay, cell service is down, okay, people are trapped on roads, and, like, you don't know if this is, like, just kind of your immediate area or, like, across multiple states. You don't have a clue yet. How are you, and I don't want to jump ahead in the story, so we'll come back and we'll come back and we'll pick up here, but I just want to know, how long after that moment did you realize the extent of it? And just like I say, we'll come back to picking up to where we left off. But I just am curious, like, from right now, you're dead nuts into it. This guy's stuck. Comms are down. Trees are all over the place. At what point was a picture painted for you about the scale of it?
Probably 3 days later.
Okay. See, and I asked that because this is how long it took for information to travel to somebody who was boots on the ground. We're talking about 3 days, and you're somebody who is at least decently connected. It's not like you just moved there. Like, you're from there. You are paying attention to what's going on in your community, but you're triaging your own situation. You got your own stuff going on, and you're not finding out about the scale of it until 3 days later. I think that's a fascinating thing to think about, how, like, when we're right in the middle of a storm, a physical, actual storm, like, it's impossible for us to grasp the scale of what's really going on, and the importance of preparedness the importance of preparedness in being ready to tackle that blind spot, because in the immediate, you're already ready. You've got the excavator. I'm sure you had a firearm at some point in this. You're decently ready. Family's taken care of, power, water, food. But this thing was going to get exponentially worse, and you were going to have to continue to find out, how you were going to play a part of it and how it was going to be affecting you in the long haul. And so, anyway, I find that to be really fascinating. But, okay, excavator, guys are stuck on the road. I'm guessing you got that guy on his way, and he probably got stopped at another tree a mile up the road or something. Like, what happened?
It does say exactly what you just said, Jake. We kept going and ended up just, by the time we would clear to the right, we would, on our way back home, there would be more trees that fell on the way back home. I'm just going to tell this story very briefly because it could be a whole nother podcast, I think. It could be a whole nother episode, but we came upon this what is normally just a stream. It's probably maybe 3 feet wide. 3 feet wide, maybe a foot or two deep at any given time. And it was in the middle of a horse pasture. So I'm driving past this horse pasture and I see the horses that are in what is now an actual lake. Like, and it hasn't even rained that hard yet. Like, the heavy rains. I haven't even experienced the heavy rains yet. It was raining, but it wasn't, to me, it didn't feel like enough rain to have caused this stream to flood. It hasn't, to me, I'm like, well, it has to be raining somewhere else. Just having a little bit of common sense, knowing that, well, the rain is coming out of a reservoir, or the rain is filling reservoirs somewhere and they're dumping down here to us. So the horses were literally swimming And it was really sad, I mean, to watch, because the horses were swimming around trying to find somewhere to stand, but they couldn't get outside the fence because the fence was on elevated ground, basically made a bowl with a fence that they couldn't get out of. So they were just swimming constantly swimming. And until, and you know, and more common sense, they can't swim forever. You know, they're gonna give out at some point. Luckily, there was a little patch of elevation that the water hadn't got to yet, that they were able to, most of them were able to get up to and stand and rest. But then there was one that just wouldn't follow the rest. And he continued to try to get out another way, and it just wasn't working.
There's a parable in there, isn't it?
Yeah. So I came up on this person who was losing their mind. I mean, they were hysterical about this horse. And I get out and I walk up to her, and maybe lady in her mid 40s, very petite. And she's hysterical. Like I said, she's sobbing. There's, you know, crying. There's tears coming down her face. She's not breathing well. She's breathing really shallow and really, really fast. And I immediately, my first thought was, she's going to jump in. She's going to 100%. She's going to go try to save this horse. I said, ma'am, I really don't, I can't stay here with you to help you sort through this. I said, but whatever you do, please do me a favor. Don't add to the problem. Do not jump in, because if you jump in to save this horse, it's going to become a rescue operation for you instead of you rescuing the horse. We're going to be coming back to try to get you out. Please don't jump in after this horse. Yeah. She said, I'm not. And I said, okay, don't do it. You know, I turned around one more time. Don't do it. It's a horse. You know, I know that it's valuable, and this is you are emotionally attached to this thing, but it's not worth you losing your life over this horse. Yeah. So I leave. We go do what we got to do. We clear it. Just more of the same. You know, we could talk about trees down for 3 hours. Sure. Because that's a lot of what happened. But we just continued, went and cut that out. The wind was still bad, and the rains are starting to come. So as I'm driving back, we clear it, coming back around the corner, around this curve, and all I see is a sea of red lights at this horse pasture. And I said, she did it. And sure enough, there was all kinds of emergency personnel. There was rescue squad. There was ambulance, EMS, sheriff's office. Everyone was there. I used to work in emergency services, so I know all of them. And so I yell across what is now used to be a stream, what is now a lake. I yell across the lake. I stopped and I saw them. They were trying to pull this horse out, but the woman is beside the horse. She will not, she's refusing to leave the horse's side, but she can't get out. The horse can't get out. I yell across the lake, hey, you know, do you guys need this? I pointed to the excavator, and they waved me on over. So I park, get out, and we end up getting, it wasn't pretty, but we ended up getting the horse out, and her as well. Incident, no one was hurt. But the amount of resources that took, that's exactly what I was trying to explain to her before I left, that this is now a human being that is going to require tons of county resources to save this one person who made a terrible decision, you know, to jump in and try to save this horse. It's a wonder the horse didn't kill her.
Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, that's what I thought earlier when you were telling the story, was like, I mean, if you try and save a horse is going to drown you. But yeah, she became a liability, and like you said, you know, put a huge strain on resources. But I can't blame her. You know, people are freaking out. I can't judge her. God bless her. You know, I'm sure she was going through her whole own thing there. So this is not to like criticize a victim of the thing, which I know is not. As I know it's not what you're doing. I'm just being clear for the people who are listening that it's just an example of how you can let your emotions override logic and the types of consequences that that can create, you know, for other folks. But
Jake, let me interrupt you real quick. There's a a good point. There's a reason why I put so much emphasis on telling that story. And if anybody asks, that this is one of the stories that I tell them is about the horse, because it was at that moment that I realized, that you asked the question that brought us to this point in the conversation. You ask, when did you realize, like when the information, how long does it take for the information? I had to be on the ground. But this, for me personally, is when I realized that, oh, wow, this is bigger than just weather. People are starting to act irrationally. This is an irrational thought.
Sure.
And I can't imagine what's going on in other places right now.
Right.
So I got the information from emergency services while I was there. Hey, man, you should see this area. You should see that area. You should, dude. The town of Old Fort. It's a really small town just east of Asheville, North Carolina. It's demolished. I mean, that's what they were telling me. They were like, dude, Old Fort is gone. Like, and I'm like, what? It hasn't even rained here. I'm 18 miles east of Old Fort, and just 18 miles away, they're telling me that the whole town is demolished.
Yeah.
And so taking this info back home, so everything's clear. We get back home, and this is when the gut check happened. It was like, wow, I've got to go do something. I've got this excavator. I have no doubt that, that was divinely appointed, that happened the way it did. I believe in God. I believe he provides us with things that he thinks he already knows we're going to need, that we have no idea.
Without question. Okay, so where are we at in day one right now? Like, give me like a time. Like, tell me where we're at in day one.
It's 2 p.m.
Okay, God, a lot has happened.
Once I got back home, there was some prep, right? There was some gathering of items and things like that. Obviously fuel for the saw, chainsaw, extra chains, tools, water, food, communication, because the cell phones are down. So I grab all that stuff and put it together. And luckily, I may be jumping ahead, but months ago, before the storm, several months ago, me, my dad, and some guys at the local radio club, the McDowell Amateur Radio Association, decided to go in on a GMRS repeater. Some guy was selling it. We were actually trying to fix one of the antennas on our one of the antennas on a tower that's in town. And the climber who climbed the tower went up there and he's like, "Hey, did you guys know that you had a GMRS antenna up there with coax? It's just not hooked up to anything in the repeater room." Purchased the repeater, had it programmed, brought it in, hooked it up. Everything worked flawlessly. It's got like a humongous footprint. I can talk on that repeater anywhere inside McDowell County and actually into other counties. Wow. From that repeater.
Wow.
It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, this is crazy. Yeah, the things leading up to this happening, I mean, it's just such a testament to God's grace. I mean, to have all of these they're just random things that just keep happening. I mean, they're not at all. I mean, God was clearly setting you up to be a force for good in this time, and you were doing what you should do with the blessings that God give us, even though, not for any reason, not because you want to be a hero or whatever, just because it's who you are and what you do. I find that to be the most inspiring and fascinating part of this story. Folks are going to want to know what GMRS radio you and your wife were using during this, scenario.
It's really what I started out with in my radio adventure. It was just the cheap Baofangs or anything like that.
Look at that. Look at that. People want to throw shade on good equipment or because it's inaffordable or whatever, and it's like the best radio is the radio that you have, and this stuff is working, and this is life-saving equipment at this point.
Backtracking to your video on grid down comms with the F-350, man, it literally, I think that's actually what got us linked. Is What is why it impressed me so much is because you were talking about things in your video that I literally did.
Yeah.
Like it literally happened to me.
Right.
And I was the guy. I was the skeptic for years. My dad wanted me to get into ham radio. He wanted me, come get your license. Come, if you'll get your license, son. If you'll just get your license, I'll pay for your test and I'll buy your first radio. He just wanted me to do it. And I don't need Dad. I don't need a radio. Why do I need to talk? I don't need this. Wow, this is dumb. Why do you just sit on the radio and talk to people all day? Like what?
Yeah.
And then
Dad was right.
I got serious about it, and I went and I studied. I took my test. I got my license, and lo and behold, my first radio, as most people, is a little $25 Bayafang.
Well, and this is an emergency situation, so anybody that had a radio during this situation could have been using it license-free for this event. The thing of it is, and it's like we talked about at the top of this video, which is it's a license to learn. Imagine having to figure out how to use this radio while this is all happening. That's not a realistic thing to even consider doing.
Jake, I was literally training people because this is what got me. This is what one of the big things in that video that got me is when you said, I've got X amount of radios in my truck and I've got, a few in my bag. They're cheap Bayafang radios. They're giveaways. They're literally, and I literally did that. Yeah. I had a bank of radios. I grabbed at first. I made sure that the whole family was taken care of and had communication.
Right.
And then I grabbed everything else that I had and I threw it in the truck. I was having classes on the tailgate of my truck. Then I did that over and over until I ran out of radios.
Guys, thank you for watching. This is part 1 of Nate's story about what happened in Western North Carolina during Hurricane Helene. This is going to be a multiple part thing, right? We can't expect somebody to summarize 3 days worth of rescue and relief efforts in 45 minutes. That would just be unreasonable. So this is part 1. We're going to pick up on another part, so stay tuned for that. Thank you for watching.